move over there.
Candidates and viewers across central New York, in joining the Tompkins County Democratic Committee's 22nd Congressional Candidates Forum. I am Linda Hoffman, the newly elected chair of the county committee. We are noting a special tribute this evening to the solid foundation of the TCDC being built through decades of Irene Stein's leadership and significant commitment. In late December, we experienced the passing of Jim Gustafson as the chair, and this was deeply felt throughout the Tompkins County Democratic Committee community and beyond. His legacy has and will continue to deepen the power of grassroots politics and is expanding that very foundation of our committee. I would like to introduce the forum moderator, Fred Balfour. He is retired and is a WRFI News Team volunteer. Fred will now open the Q&A. Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Linda, and good evening. And let me add my welcome to all of you in tonight's forum. We're going to warm up by asking each of you candidates in alphabetic order to simply introduce yourself by giving your full name and the city and county where you live in alpha order. Francis, will you start us out?
Sure. My full name is Francis Dennis Conole, and I live in Syracuse, New York, in the county of Onondaga.
And Vanessa?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Fajan-Turner. I live in Ithaca, New York, in the county of Tompkins.
And Steve?
Aho. My name is Stephen W. Holden Sr., and I live in Camillus, there in Onondaga County.
And Sarah?
Good evening, Sarah Klee Hood, the town of DeWitt in Onondaga County.
Thank you. And Cole?
Majok, city of Syracuse, county of Onondaga.
And Josh?
Hey, everybody. Josh Riley, Johnson City, New York, Broome County.
And Sam?
Sam Roberts, Syracuse, New York, Onondaga County.
Thanks, everybody. And we have a chance to hear your voice and hear your whole name. Let's review tonight's rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening comment and 2 minutes for closing. I'll call on each of you in alphabetic order for opening and reverse alphabetic for closing. For the questions, I'll call on you in a random order and you will have 1 minute for your answer. Our host, Linda Hoffman, will give a hand signal with 15 seconds remaining in your time. At 0 seconds, she will ask you to stop. The candidates in last night's forum for the 53rd Senate seat started doing the extra few seconds dance about halfway through the broadcast, and we ask nicely for the moment that you refrain from that practice. Note that our superb technical support staff will enter each question in the chat box. If you are in the second half of the random ordering, you may want to keep the question fresh in your mind. We're planning to wrap up on or just before 8:30 p.m. Let's get started with opening statements in alpha order. Francis, will you lead us out?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here tonight with all of you, with all 7 of my candidates. We were talking about height earlier. I think we could feel the basketball team here at the Rec League downtown. But it's wonderful to be here. Sincerely, I want to thank all of the Tompkins County Committee for your critical work now and your work for our democracy. I've been a committee member for the past few years, and I've worked hard to support our local candidates. I know how important it is during this critical time in our country. My name is Francis Conole, and I'm running to represent the people of Central New York and to be your voice in Congress. I was born just up the road from here in Syracuse, New York, and my family's lived in Central New York for generations. My mom was a teacher. She's a proud graduate of Ithaca College. My grandmother was a teacher for 30 years in the Syracuse City School District. And I wanted to find a way to serve and give back. I went to the Naval Academy. I graduated in May 2001, right before 9/11. I deployed almost immediately after, deployed multiple times over the Middle East. I had a great career of service. I served in the Persian Gulf and on the ground in Iraq. I served in our intelligence community and on President Obama's Armed Forces Inaugural Committee. And I served as a Middle East policy advisor to the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon. I worked with people from all different backgrounds and brought them together to take on tough challenges. And I spent my life confronting crises. And I made the decision to run in this moment because of the array of crises we face. And I look forward to the questions tonight.
Thanks. Vanessa?
Thanks so much, Fran. And I'm a little bit more of a hockey girl. My name is Vanessa Fajan-Turner, and I'm really thrilled to be before you running to represent my hometown and our region and the new 22nd district in Congress. Everyone in this race comes from a place of great strength, and my strengths are diverse and a bit untraditional, but I believe they are uniquely suited to serve this district at this critical moment. I went to Beverly J. Martin Elementary, DeWitt, and Ithaca High School. When I was 10, I joined Vitamin L and had my first performance here at the Special Olympics held at Ithaca College. At 17, I started New York State's first high school girls ice hockey team with the partnership and support of many on this call, for which I received the award I still treasure most, the inaugural Megan Chol Leadership Award. For the last 2 decades, I've spent my career bridging my environmental and political work here with efforts on the national and global stage, working with nonprofits and the United Nations. I've held Wall Street accountable for fossil fuel funding, held their feet to the fire on climate change, and I've contributed to federal regulation to make the financial sector accountable for its outsized carbon footprint. I'm also a founding principal with Investable Oceans, which connects climate conscious investors to climate smart projects. And I'm helping resource the nation's most ambitious city level Green New Deal right here in Ithaca. Aside from my work in environmental advocacy, I've worked locally to promote democratic values right here at home. I've helped support and fundraise for numerous candidates in the Finger Lakes in central New York and across the country. And when the pandemic hit, I moved into action to source large quantities of PPE for under-resourced hospitals and to seed emergency financial lifelines for domestic workers. I'm running for Congress because this moment is so important for bold and science-driven action at scale for our planet, for our economy, for this district, and for our future. And I thank you so much.
Thanks, Vanessa. Next, we'll hear from Steve.
Like I said, aho from the Cherokee and Cheyenne nations. I want to thank you for coming on here tonight. Much like Fran, I am an Army officer. I am a military officer. I spent 23 years in the Army dealing with foreign humanitarian assistance in countries such as Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, Pakistan, Jordan, and Egypt. I know the criticality of what our time means. It's time now. We are at the event horizon of our democracy. Whoever wins this nomination has to be bold and fearless in the face of what he or she is going to have to face. As a dedicated progressive, I stand firmly behind the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, eliminating student loan debt, and lifting up communities such as mine, the Native American community, who have too long been left behind. I humbly ask for your support tonight because I believe wholeheartedly that mine truly stands with the people here in Central New York. I wasn't born here, but I came as quickly as I could. My beautiful wife, Julie, is a union kid from right there in Liverpool. My father-in-law was second shift GM until he got moved to Tonawanda. And that experience in my life has held hard with me. So I humbly ask tonight in this great debate amongst my 6 other great candidates to listen to a community, the Native community, who have too often been left behind. So thank you, and on to the next candidate.
Thanks. And Sarah, you're next.
There we go. Oh, my mouse isn't working. Thank you. Thank you so much for this forum tonight. I'm honored and delighted to be here. With the redistricting of the state, we have a unique opportunity to help Congress and keep it blue. We must not let this opportunity be lost. I am Sarah Klee Hood. veteran mother, a district native working in economic development, and an elected town councilor. Born and raised here in Central New York and standing on the shoulders of 3 generations of labor, I'm the first in my family to earn a college degree, and I've got the student loans to prove it. My husband and I returned home after service to raise our small children. As a veteran, I served as an Air Force operations officer where I led 140 troops across 4 divisions and managed a budget of $25 million. Being a woman, a wife, and a full-time working mother raising 2 young children, I am forced to make comprehensive decisions, ensuring both short-term and long-term needs are met. And like I said, I'm an elected town councilor here for my town in DeWitt. But as a candidate, I directly increased voter accessibility and turnout, creating 2 county turnout records. And this all occurred during a pandemic when we were seeing the lowest voter records in history at many of the government levels. In my full-time job in economic development, I focus in clean technology. I help the scientists and the small business owners create companies that directly create the jobs and address our climate changes and challenges. What started as a simple conversation about sidewalks has evolved to a people-focused movement, just bringing it back to basics. When I first started my campaign, I was quickly labeled by Washington, D.C. as a non-traditional candidate. Ironically, I'm the one with the relevant and qualifying lived experiences, and I provide a winning alternative to the business as usual. It's time to start believing in our unlimited potential, and it's time to start believing in our community, our children, and our future. It's time to elect a candidate for the people. I ask for your support and vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And you, Cole?
So, my name is Chol Majok. I am a South Sudanese American. I'm 36 years old. I came to the United States 20 years ago as part of the Lost Boys of the Sudan. I came to Syracuse as an accompanied refugee minor and 5 years in foster care system right here in Syracuse, the South Side. I went to City High School, Fowler High School. I went to Syracuse University for a bachelor's in political science, went to SUNY Albany for a master's, and went to St. John Fisher College for a doctorate in executive leadership. I'm married to my wife of 12 years, and we have 5 children together, and 1 on the way in April. I'm currently a city councilor serving third district council in the city of Syracuse. I'm running because it is time to put politics aside. While many of us as leaders are busy trying to be more blue and red, poverty is taking over our streets, particularly rural America and the urban center. It is time to prioritize people over politics. It's time to invest in people through workforce development by strengthening manufacturing, trade, small businesses. Build a 21st century public safety system, support police and fire, fight for women, LGBTQIA+, voting rights, and all have free will and choices. Strong, affordable housing that is free of lead. Support strong tax base locally. Support rural Americans and all. Fellow Democrat, vote for me. I'll bring all Americans in this district together. Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. And Josh, you're next.
Thank you. I think I just heard Chol say he has 5 kids and 1 on the way, so he has my vote. It is really great to be with all of you, my fellow candidates, members of the Tompkins County Democratic Committee. Thanks so much for organizing this event. Mine is a very typical upstate New York story. My family has been here for over 100 years working in the local factories, and those were really good blue-collar jobs. And the deal was you could earn a place in the middle class even if you didn't have a college degree, so long as you had a strong work ethic. But that deal hasn't been available to everyone, especially in communities of color. And for so many others, it's been broken. Since I was in high school, we've lost about 2/3 of our manufacturing jobs. Wages have stagnated, poverty rates have soared. And so you look today and you see the top 1% have more wealth than the entire middle class combined. And I see that not just as an economic issue, it's also a moral issue. And I've been working throughout my career to try to address it. I got my start in public service working as a staff assistant for Maurice Hinchey, who was a crusader for progress and also against the establishment. I served in the US Department of Labor, where I was focused on unemployment insurance and trade adjustment programs. I served as a fellow on Senator Ted Kennedy's Labor and Pensions Committee staff, where I fought to raise the minimum wage and to strengthen the Family Medical Leave Act. Out of law school, I turned down jobs with the banks on Wall Street, and instead I joined a landmark civil rights lawsuit representing kids from low-income families who were having trouble getting the health care they needed. I later served as general counsel on a subcommittee of the US Senate Judiciary Committee, where I'm proud of the work we did to fight for voting rights, criminal justice reform, and to hold big corporations accountable. And finally, in more recent years, I've been in private legal practice, where I filed briefs in the US Supreme Court challenging Donald Trump's discriminatory immigration policies, an issue that's near and dear to my heart because my wife is a daughter of immigrants from India and Ecuador. And I believe that my deep roots in upstate New York and my proven experience in Congress and in the courts is going to allow me to be the best possible representative for you. And I can't wait to do it. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thanks, Josh. And Sam, to you.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to pay homage to Irene Stein. Is she on this Zoom? Is Irene on the Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Just to let you know, her and I served together many years on the state's executive committee, as well as the rural conference. We set that up in Onondaga County originally. But anyways, I'm Sam Roberts, as you know, and I'm known for my dedicated and compassionate service in all the years of service that I've had as an elected official, as a community-based person, as a union elected union leader as well. I had 30 years with General Motors. I was a tool and die maker / mold maker, depending on when we came back from layoff because of the economy, what was open at that time for us to go into. Holden, you mentioned your dad was at General Motors. I must know him. But anyways, I went to Tonawanda as well, and also to Messina, St. Lawrence County. I was a displaced worker and was very fortunate to have a great union such as the UAW, who was smart enough and had the foresight to negotiate a contract that would allow us to do that and keep our jobs. But also too, my elected officials, I was a county legislator, served 5 two-year terms. So that means I was elected 5 times, went on, then I took a break, went up to Messina, came back to Syracuse, New York, and ran for state assembly, I was elected 3 times. In my 3rd term, I was pulled up by Governor Como then, to become the commissioner of OTDA. And I was very honored to be the commissioner there, set over a $5.6 billion budget, had over 2,000 employees. And I felt like I had a personal relationship with all of them. I had an open door policy, same way I'll have when we go to Congress. Looking forward to working with you and being that voice.
Sam, we need to stop. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
At your time. Thank you so much for your understanding.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Linda. Quick note on the questions. We asked the committee members to submit questions over the past week, and we received a rich and interesting set of questions. In some cases, we consolidated similar questions into one, or we reworded them either for brevity or clarity. Let's move to our first question with a randomized order for the candidates. And Vanessa, you're the first one on the question, and I'll announce each one as their turn comes. Question 1 is, how will you ensure paying proper wages to your staff? Will you actively seek to pay interns?
Yes, thank you so much for this question. I believe that change need not wait until elected to demonstrate it. And so we are running a campaign that aims to enact the kinds of values we want to see in DC. We are ensuring that any average wage is increased for our core campaign staff. All interns will be paid a living wage, if not able to do more. We have provided safe, good housing in the city of Ithaca for our team, and we'll be building out bases around the district. And we are providing and sourcing electric vehicles for campaigners to be driving around in to try and minimize what might be small and insignificant, but symbolic change. It is what we have to walk the walk. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Sarah, you're next.
Great, thank you. Similarly, we're aiming for a living wage for interns, and we want the professionals that are on the field. Honey, excuse me one moment. Okay, these are the challenges we have, right? So I think at the end of the day, we are aiming for a living wage for all of our employees. And I'm proud to say that everybody on our team from the bottom to the top is local from the district. That was very important to me. And because of that, we're able to accommodate their needs in terms of what they need for transportation and lodging. Similarly, when elected, I plan to mandate a minimum wage similar to those that have already been precedented, around $52,000 a year, which would equate to a standard wage that is livable for everybody, at least at the very start, and we'll see where we can grow from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And Josh, you're next.
So I amend my vote earlier for Chol and say Sarah's kid. That was one of the better answers that we've had in any of these forums, so they also get my vote. Yes, all of our staff will be paid a living wage. We're also providing health insurance to everybody. It's the right thing to do. I got my start in politics as an intern in Congressman Hinchy's office, and I always remember how well I was treated in that role. And so this is a great opportunity to pay it forward. There's a bigger issue here as well, which is that we need to raise the minimum wage, and pay the minimum wage, not just for our staffs, but for every worker in America. One of the things I worked on when I did a fellowship with Ted Kennedy's Labor and Pensions Committee staff was the fight to raise the minimum wage. Then we need to raise the federal minimum wage altogether. I've also worked throughout my career litigating Fair Labor Standards Act cases on behalf of workers who were cheated out of their wages or deprived their wages. And we need to make sure we're enforcing those laws after we get them on the books as well.
Thanks. Cole, you're next.
Thank you. You know, I understand the importance of paying people fair wages. Because as somebody that is a refugee and an immigrant, I have done all kinds of jobs, and there were times where I have worked so hard, and by the time I get a paycheck, it wasn't enough to cover my bills, just the basic bills. So I have a huge empathy for making sure that people get paid well to at least support their children, their families. So for me, that's a priority. And here in the city of Syracuse, as a city councilor, and as I work under Mayor Minor, we made sure that our city staff were paid at least $15 an hour for the city employees. So that's very important to me, because I know how it feels to feed families and working hard, and yet you can meet. So I'll make sure that happens.
Sam?
We need to organize everyone and make them all join the union. That's what we need to do to make sure they have wages, fair wages, a living wage, and health care. And it's very important that happens. You know, you can only imagine working every day and still being in poverty. And that's a real story. And people just don't realize that really happens. Folks are working 2 and 3 times, 2 and 3 jobs a day, and still living in poverty. So we don't want our staff to live any differently than what we do. We want to make sure they have a roof over their head, a clean place to live, food, a decent meal for their families as well. Interns are very important, very key. We've all been there, done that. I never got paid. It was always a volunteer situation, or you did it for credit. Well, credit and dollars. Thank you.
Steve?
No, thank you very much. And before I get any further, Josh and Sarah, it gets easier when the kids get older. I want to tell you that right now. It just does. I get to turn my grandson over to my daughter, so it does get better. Okay. And Sam, I want to thank you for the work you did for the UAW. As my father-in-law, who is a retired second shift Tonawanda UAW, and Chol, with your work with the refugee community, as I have a close knit bond with the Afghan community up in Liverpool. I plan on paying my people about $70,000 a year. Why? Because I know what this particular generation is going through. My son's going to turn 30 this year. My daughter, 29, the same thing with my stepson. They've busted all of this time to get their college degree and to work hard. And what
Thanks.
they're getting.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Francis, I suspect you know that you're next.
I got cut off there. Okay.
Yeah.
Watch the clock, Steve.
No worries. No worries.
No, listen, this is such an important question. These, individuals, people that volunteer and work on campaigns, not just volunteer interns or campaign staffs. I've said this to the people who I've worked with. It's really a service to the country. I mean, it's such important work, and they're working to change the fabric of our country, and it's so important. I have tremendous respect for them. I've been involved even when I wasn't a candidate, working with campaigns and supporting them. So we are absolutely paying our staff very competitive wages, and we're having paid interns. We have healthcare. It's going to be critically important. Our office is right over there. We just got an office on Genesee Street. So I would welcome everyone to stop by and say hello.
Thanks, Francis. Okay, Steve, we reward you to kick off the second question, which is, what is your number one policy priority when you arrive in Washington?
Easy. Medicare for all. 100%. 15 feet away from me, sitting in the other room, is my father. He is recovering from double cancer surgery. He was more concerned with his premiums and his copay than he was on getting healthy. That's not the way it should work. We are the only westernized democracy that does not have a health care plan like this. And as far as I know, I'm the only one that supports a full Medicare for all single payer health care system. Why? Because no one should go through this. When I was in the military, when I was an Army officer, I had my health care taken care of, but it was not perfect. Since retirement, yeah, I have the VA and I have TRICARE, but it has its own problems.
Thanks,
So I
Steve.
want to do that.
you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Sam, you're up next.
Thank you. My first thing that I would want to do and focus in on, and again, we're doing a great job under the infrastructure bill, but it just doesn't go far enough to put Americans to work to be. And my thing is the economy, focus on the economy to keep our businesses here, bring more businesses back to this country, start up and support the ones that we have, because you're busy. If you don't have strong businesses, you don't have strong jobs. And my whole thing is to keep people working, put America back to work, even more so than what we're promising them now, and to make sure that it happens and we have a diverse and inclusive workforce.
Thanks, Sam. And Sarah, can you respond to that?
Sure. My number one policy position, similar to Steve's, would be healthcare. I am a supporter of single payer universal healthcare, have been since the start, but essentially we can't expect to have those jobs. We can't attack climate change. We can't look at the issues that are derived from systemic racism unless we have a healthy body and a healthy country to do that. Being able to have equitable and accessible healthcare will allow our folks to ensure that they have the necessary medical care and treatment when it's needed, and therefore they're able to move on with their lives, effectively moving the economy forward through jobs and different mechanisms. So I absolutely support healthcare. And since we're going to have a majority in the House and across the board, we really need to shoot the moon here and take advantage of this opportunity that will be laid bare in front of us. Thank you.
Thanks. And Vanessa?
Thank you. I love that, Sarah. Let's get the majority. I'm going to wake up that first day and really fight to get family care infrastructure back into the Build Back Better bill. It is on the fence and has been in danger of being on the cutting block. And as Steve and Sarah have so rightly said, Medicare for all, healthcare is essential for people. So is the conversation about elder care, child care, and family care, and establishing the care infrastructure that allows everyone to go to work. Then we're bringing that money here to the district from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And the next wave of the fight against climate change is manufacturing and generating the technology that has been in development for the last 10 to 15 years. Those companies are looking to build big manufacturing plants now to scale their solutions. This is the place. This district has the manufacturing history to be that focal point. We need the elder and the childcare to do it and create jobs along the way.
Well done, right on the finish line, Vanessa. Josh, you're next.
Yeah. So I think that the number one issue here is our democracy. We cannot begin to address the issues of climate change and healthcare and jobs and racism and all of the other issues if our democracy remains weakened and imperiled. How can we address any of those issues if we can't even have a peaceful transition of power anymore? So we need to restore and we need to strengthen our democracy as a first order priority. What I mean by first order priority is that it's foundational and it's required to be able to address all of the other huge challenges we have. I published an op-ed on this in Syracuse.com earlier this week, where I laid out a handful of specific things that we need to do right away. One is we need to restore the Voting Rights Act. It was gutted by the Supreme Court in 2013. I worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee then to restore that bill, but we also need to go further and make it easier to vote, not harder. We also have to fix our broken campaign finance system. So our democracy needs to be strengthened and restored.
Thanks. And Francis?
Yeah, listen, these are all really great answers. And I think it underscores, when I talked about it feels like right now we're confronting crisis upon crisis upon crisis. And so to try to say we have one thing that we want to get done is really important. But to answer the question, I have to agree with Josh on what has to be the top priority. Josh wrote a wonderful piece on this, protecting our democracy. It's under threat. I've served my entire life. I've taken 7 oaths to the Constitution. I've lost friends and loved ones serving this country, and people have served to protect our democracy. And it's literally under threat right now. Today was John Lewis's birthday, and we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to pass the For the People Act. If we don't get something done on this now, this administration, when I walk into Congress, it's going to be a top priority. Thank you for the question.
And Chol, you're next.
Priority would be to address poverty by investing in workforce development. And as somebody that have worked in workforce and trying to help people get jobs, it is important to know that there is a room to improve gaps in skills, whether here in urban centers or in rural America. And I think, one of the things that we don't pay attention sometimes is we are so caught up in trying to build big things, we forget that the bottom get left behind, which is regular folks like Majok and many Americans who are trying to make it every day. And poverty, as I said, poverty is taking over our streets, and we are not paying attention to that. And the more we give people tools to support themselves, we build a strong tax base, and we build a strong America. So workforce development, and I'll support our president to get that done.
Thanks, Chol. And for our third question, Sarah, we want you to kick it off. We're going to focus a little bit more on stuff that came up moments ago. Climate crisis. What current federal initiatives are the most important for Congress to support, and why? Sarah, take it away.
Sure. So I think that we've got a few on the table that are addressing the urgency at hand. When we talk about climate change, I like to address the fact that I think we need to reimagine how we are addressing it currently. We have policies in place that are very aggressive, which is definitely needed to address the existential threat of climate change. But what I found through my work is that both the funding and the technology itself, it's not there yet. clean technology is a very immature technology across the spectrum, and it's highly expensive. So when we start talking about policies, we need to ensure that the policies in place are realistic and that we're able to get there because we're funding adequately. The funding is there. I agree we should increase the funding, but we also need to do it a little bit smarter. We need to ensure that we're giving those technologists and scientists the $250,000 that they may need for one IP prototyping so that they can get out of the lab and into manufacturing and into the market so that municipalities can buy it. So at the end of the day, I think we really need to reimagine what climate funding looks like. Thank you.
Thanks. Steve, on climate crisis.
All right, thank you. I know there's a lot of debate in this campaign on who the climate change candidate. I'll just say this. We Native Americans were the first environmentalists. You know, it means a lot to us. So one of the things I want to talk to is what I do on a daily basis, working with the people in the federal government to include the National Weather Service on tracking and being able to protect us all from climate change, or the people within the Department of the Interior, or whether that's the folks in the EPA. I teach people finance and contracts across the federal government on a daily basis. What I support is a Green New Deal for Central New York, and I have from day one. And what that's going to do, I would have been one of the few people in Congress, the few Democrats who would have voted no, along with people like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, in the uncoupling of the infrastructure bill with the regular Build Back Better bill. Why? Because
thanks, Steve. Steve, thank you.
All right,
Francis, take it away.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I want to applaud Sarah and Vanessa for your work in this field, for your critical work in this field. And, you know, Steve, your comments and your policy positions as well. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is absolutely a crisis. We see it here in Central New York with the flooding in our lakes and the disruption of our ecosystems. And if you even look broader, I mean, we're talking about a threat to our planet, even right now as a national security issue, as Russia moves into Ukraine. I mean, there's an energy component to that. There's a climate change nexus to that. So it's going to take really massive investment to thwart this, or the planet, we're just going to burn this planet down if we don't do something about this. I support the Thrive Act. It's a $10 trillion investment. I think that's around the magnitude that it's going to take, and it's going to be an opportunity for jobs here in Central New York. So thank you for that great question.
Thanks, Francis. And Josh?
Sure. If I can commend Fran for commending Sarah and Vanessa and Steve, I would do that. So I think three things. One, we need to restore the regulations that were rolled back in the Trump administration. Those need to get back on the books. The Biden administration is doing a pretty good job with that. Some of those restoration of regulations are now tied up in the courts. There's legal challenges, but we've got to get regulations back on the books to undo the damage that was done in the Trump administration. That's thing one. Thing two is it doesn't help to have regulations and laws on the books if nobody's enforcing them. We need a cop on the beat. We've got to make sure we're funding the Justice Department. We've got to make sure we're funding EPA, and we've got to make sure we have people enforcing those laws. Thing three, Title II of the recently enacted bipartisan infrastructure law is potentially a massive game changer. It's an entire title dedicated to clean energy supply chains. And so our representative in Congress needs to fight every day to make sure that funding is directed back to upstate New York to create the green jobs of the future.
Thanks, Josh. And Sam Roberts, over to you.
Plain meaning to support all of the above. And when I was in the assembly and it was already said, we didn't need to say it again. We just said we lend our support and attach ourselves to that. I agree with all that. But, and again, to add to that as well, we have to, again, put our money where our mouth is. And it's all about dollars and supporting this. We have to reduce our carbon footprint. We have to, like, I'm glad my sister there talked about the electric cars. Again, I'm a product of General Motors. We have to continue to support those kind of initiatives, when it comes to reducing. Our natural resources are one of our prides in Central New York, the Finger Lakes, and Southern Tier. Water, clean water, and clean air. That has brought more jobs to this area, more businesses to this area over the years than anything else. And we have to keep it that way. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Cole. And sorry. Thanks, Sam. Cole, you're next.
Fred is Chol with a strong C, Chol.
Cole. Got
So as somebody that have lived in the rural area in my younger life, you know, I understand the importance of making sure that we have rain and that the drought doesn't come through. And part of making sure we stay away from drought is to make sure that our environment is able to sustain rain and bring rain in and all of that. So for me, I'm in support of hydropower. I'm in support of wind power and anything in that area. That's for me, as well as support fight deforestation, because the more trees we have, better for our environment. And I'm going to fight to make sure that that happens. And as somebody that have lived in the rural area, I know how important it is to have plans around for sustainability.
Thanks. And Vanessa, you're the wrap up.
I want to say how amazing it is that we're in a debate for Congress talking about climate, which used to be the third rail issue. And so I'm welcome everybody to be climate candidates. I should not corner that title. Please, we need all of us on this issue. We are excited that there's going to be $1 trillion transferred in a historic sum from the federal government to state and local governments as part of the infrastructure bill. But since 2015, when the Paris Agreement was signed, which set out the climate goals that we are now working towards, the top 60 banks in the world, just 60 banks, have funneled $4 trillion into fossil fuel companies alone. Every dollar we put in going forward needs to be matched with the kinds of regulation on what banks can continue to finance going forward. We need to regulate climate risk disclosures and increase and prevent a climate bubble like the mortgage bubble.
Thanks, Vanessa. For the fourth question, we'll lead off with Cole. And the question is, women's rights to choose is under attack. How will you ensure that these rights are ensured to all women?
As somebody that came from an environment where civil war happened because of people's rights being violated, there is, I can say here, there is no candidate better than me here in fighting for those rights, as well as coming from an environment where women's rights were not respected. For me, I'm going to fight with every power I got in me to make sure that women are given dignity like everybody else. As a Christian, you know, I'm a strong believer that God gave all of us a right to choose, a right to have free will, and a right to have dignity across. And I'm gonna make sure that I work across the aisle to make sure that those rights and women rights, LGBTQIA rights, are respected and are given.
Thanks, Cole. Josh, over to you.
All right. And just to clarify, it's Chol, you pronounce it Chol, right?
Chol, yes, sir.
It is Chol, not Chol. Okay.
Sorry. Thanks for that.
Sure. I just want to, it's Chol. Yeah, no, of course. This is a critically important question. As a lawyer, it's something that I'm really focused on because a lot of the arguments that we're seeing against a woman's right to choose right now are rooted in what I think are terrible misreadings of the Constitution. So there's a few things I would do. Number one, the House very often, or at least House committees, or at least particular caucuses within the House, often join amicus briefs, in other words, friend of the court briefs, in the legal challenges on these issues. And so one of the things I would do and want to take a leadership role on as a lawyer is making sure we as members of Congress are putting the right advocacy in front of the courts with respect to these issues. That's one thing. The second thing, I think this is introduced in the House. I want to double check on it. I know Senator Klobuchar is leading the charge in the Senate. There's a bill in place right now that would codify Roe v. Wade, take it out of the hands of the court and make it part of statute so that it's no longer in doubt. I'm going to co-sponsor that on day one.
Thanks. And Steve, over to you.
So I would go beyond that. First of all, I can tell you as someone who has a daughter who's worried about her health care, Planned Parenthood is one of the few places she could go to get health care. So not only would I look to codify Roe v. Wade, 1, 2, I'd look to reverse the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits public dollars being able to go to abortive services. And 3, I would look for judicial reform so some right-wing attorney general in the state where I'm sitting right now, Oklahoma, doesn't decide to challenge that in federal court. So we need it. So in order to protect abortive services and the right for reproductive services for women, it is a block on block agenda on being able to do that. So all 3 of them together, I would absolutely support. We absolutely need judicial reform on top of codifying Roe v. Wade and reversing the Hyde Amendment.
Way to go, Steve, right on the line. Francis, over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, as we talk about this and so many other issues, it really underscores just how important elections are, because when we have these elections, we have the Senate at risk, we have the House at risk. We are talking about this to hold the House and to win a seat here. But we have a 6-3 majority in the courts right now, and they are threatening everything from voting rights to a woman's right to choose. So I agree with my fellow candidates on we need to fight for a federal legislation to protect Roe versus Wade. We need to fight to overturn the Hyde Amendment. We need to fight for funding to make sure that we have critical funding for Planned Parenthood throughout the country and throughout central New York. Planned Parenthood provides so many critical services in our communities. And that is something that I will stand resolute and fight for.
Thanks. Vanessa?
Thanks for this question. I want to start the question and the answer by just giving credit and thanks to Catherine Colbert, who is somebody I look up to. She was the lawyer who argued and defended Roe v. Wade, argued in front of the Supreme Court. And again, in 1992, when it was last threatened at this kind of scale. She is an advisor and a woman I look up to very much. And she is rightly very frightened about the future and will be somebody I turn to for some of the key advice. I believe the Hyde Amendment has to go. The enforcing all financing for Planned Parenthood is essential, but using a congressional platform can do more than to legislate. And I do believe it is a moment to go and use your voice to mobilize dollars like we do during campaigns for critical defense systems and funds for defending Roe v. Wade at the state level where it will be attacked the most, not even at the federal level. Thank you.
Thanks. And Sam Roberts?
Yes, thank you. It comes down to, as we said, when we were passing this legislation in the state assembly, it's a woman's body, it's her choice. And we have to support that at all levels of government and make sure that we keep the woman's right to choose there for them. And also, more importantly, that we keep, if they choose abortion, we have to keep that process safe for them. I remember when I was a child, my sister's friends, and again, what do you say when everything's been said? But the thing is these women were, her friends were giving themselves abortions and dying. And I remember the impact on me as a child. And so, we have to keep that process clean, safer for women. And again, support it. And you have to put your dollars behind it. Put your money where your mouth is, and keep fighting for the legislation. And like you said, codified Roe v. Wade, and just take it from there.
Thanks, Sam. And Sarah, wrap this one up.
Sure, thank you. Bar none, abortion is healthcare. There's no way around it. We must protect and codify Roe v. Wade and dismantle these exterior forces that are trying to limit our capabilities as women. I alone, as a wife and mother, I am uniquely qualified in this space. I've experienced life's greatest joys and deepest sorrows through pregnancy. We had difficulties getting from child 1 to child 2, to the point that I named my pregnancies as software upgrades. 1.0 was my first child, and then 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. and 2.0 was my second child. It's dehumanizing, but that's my coping mechanism because we don't have policies in place to help a woman beyond a live pregnancy. And I will use my voice and my experiences to ensure that we have comprehensive care around this personally charging issue. Thank you.
Thanks. And for the fifth question, starting out will be Josh. Voting rights are central to our democracy. However, Congress, as has been mentioned earlier, has failed to pass meaningful voting rights legislation. How will you ensure all people have equal access to the ballot?
Yeah, this is a great question. And again, this is a, am I off mute? Yep. This is a first order problem because our democracy doesn't work unless everybody has a voice, and not everybody has a voice unless everybody has a vote. So look, it was discouraging to see what happened with the voting rights legislation that was just killed in the House. So the first thing we need to do is redouble our efforts. Thing one, we need to restore the Voting Rights Act. 2013, the Supreme Court gutted it. There's restoration provisions available that would reestablish the pre-clearance requirements under Section 5. That should have been reenacted yesterday. We have to go further. Election Day should be a federal holiday. No excuse absentee voting should be a right. Folks who have paid their debts to society should have their right to vote restored. So we need to do all of that. A twin issue with this is our campaign finance system. It's completely broken and it's drowning out the voices of everyday people. And so we need to be really bold and really aggressive in overhauling the entire thing.
Thanks, Josh. Chol, you're next.
Yes. So I keep every time I answer a question, I keep bringing in a story. That is because lived experience is important for a leader to have. As somebody that came from a world where voting rights were not guaranteed or given or protected at all, it surprised me in so many ways that we are in a first world country and we are still talking about voting rights. That for me is unacceptable. For me, one of the things that I would like to see, as I agree with Josh, is make sure that people have access to voting rights. Now, what I would want to see across the nation is to make sure that people have automatic registration, that people are able to automatically register and they are able to vote. And for me, that is so important. I voted for the first time in 2008, and it was so special to me. And I want it for another person as well.
Thanks, Chol. And Vanessa?
Thank you. And I commend Josh and Fran for making this also the issue they tackle on day one, because we as Democrats need to be making this a priority. I absolutely would vote to restore the Voting Rights Act and pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act on his birthday. Thank you, Fran, for commemorating that. For sure, it's an important thing to be saying. I would vote to overturn Citizens United to get dark money out of politics, because that also undermines everything that we are doing in electing the officials for whom people can vote. And I would certainly want to be also attending to the ways that we are organized as a Democratic Party during our election cycles, given that conservatives have been organizing on their side to put millions of dollars into defeating amendments that would protect and ensure that we have same-day voter registration, no-fault absentee voting, et cetera. We need to be making those priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Steve, to you.
Thank you. Much like Fran and Sarah, this is what I spent 20 years in uniform protecting. What you all don't know is that under the Trump administration, they fully defunded voting rights officers across Department of Defense for the exact same reason. So not only do I support no excuse absentee balloting, which is a big part of my campaign, and creating a national holiday for voting, we absolutely 100% have to take dark money out of politics. I know Vanessa mentioned that, and I stand right along with her in that. You know, we are seeing that in both parties right now. You know, it wouldn't be shocked if we saw it right now here in New York 24. You know, we absolutely, this is democracy stands when the people speak. and the people can't speak when there's money railed against them. So
Well
that's one of
put,
the first.
Steve. Well put, Steve. And Francis, over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks. First, I want to thank Chol for that story. You know, because my thoughts were thinking as well, there's so many challenges that our country faces, and yet, you know, this is a country that where we're so blessed. I've been over on the ground in Iraq, a country that didn't have any real opportunity to vote, no rule of law, no voting rights, no voice for their citizens. And so we can't let these things be rolled back in our country. We have to protect our democracy. And the things that have said, I agree with. We need to support automatic voting registration, things like same-day voter registration, no excuse absentee voting, voting by mail for elderly people, and we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to pass the For the People Act. So, thank you.
Thanks, and Sarah.
Great, thank you. With this one, you folks, I think I'm glad to see we're all on the same page here. I don't think I have an original thought, but I have an original story for this one. Similarly, we have to restore and we have to pass the Voting Rights Act, John Lewis and the Voting Rights Act, bar none. I think also what we need to be doing, though, is similar to what everybody said, is we need to be removing the barriers, those intangible issues that are getting in the way, and they are preventing folks from getting their vote counted, such as National Election Day, no excuse absentee ballots. When I ran for town board, I knew that one of the barriers for my community was childcare. A lot of folks, it was a caucus process, so it could last anywhere from 1 hour to infinity, however long we wanted to debate. And I knew that childcare would be a significant issue for my people. So in order to break down that barrier and increase voter turnout and accessibility, I provided childcare on site, and we ended up with record turnout that caused 2 county history records.
Thanks, and wrap it up, Sam.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I agree that we have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And again, that's to assure the freedom to vote and the Freedom to Vote Act as well, protecting voter registration and access to that. Voting by mail, same-day voting, same-day registration and voting. You just don't know, working the streets over the years and getting people out to vote on election day, the challenges and the problems that we have at the polls, it's just not right. So that we have to do all we can to invest in that. And again, when you look at what happened with Trump and that election, the fraud that he claimed happened, and denying, wanted just to cut it off, we have to assure that that never happens. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. And for question 6, Francis, we'll ask you to start it out. How will you promote equitable and sustainable economic development in New York State? And you're muted, Francis.
No, listen, thank you for the question. I think that, really economic development is at the forefront. When we all were asking what are our top issues, I launched our campaign in front of the house my mother was born in over on Merriman Ave, about a mile from where I live on the near west side. When she was born in that house, it was it was a middle-class neighborhood. Now it's one of the top, it's one of the poorest in the country. So I think we need to start with middle-class tax cuts. We need to make permanent the child tax credit and expand that. We need to continue to invest in education and housing and key investments in our community that are not only going to support our community, but are going to really create jobs. We've talked a lot about the environment tonight. I think we've got an opportunity to really create good paying jobs here in Central New York by investing in clean energy. And I think my time's up, but thank you.
Thanks for watching the clock. Sarah, you're next.
Sure. So when I think about economic development, to me, it's a comprehensive approach. It's looking at all the different variables within whatever region we're talking about, whether it be a city, a town, a state, a congressional district. And top of mind for me is ensuring that we have those workforce development programs in place. But they need to be agile and they need to be forward thinking. And when I say forward thinking, I'm talking about a 5-year outlook and then a 10-year outlook. We need to start ensuring that we have the folks here in our community within the district that are trained and ready to go when the manufacturers do come here, should they choose our location for expansion. Similarly, though, we can't talk about having a workforce if we're not talking about having affordable housing. We're talking about having bus rapid transport. We're talking about having ensuring that we have the energy grid to support all of this. So I think at the end of the day, it's ensuring that we have an agile workforce development program that can be replicated throughout the district, ensuring we have those 5 to 10-year outlooks within training and market matchup. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Josh, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, Sarah makes just an excellent point when she talks about the importance of workforce training. One of the really exciting things that's approaching us in the next Congress is the nation's central workforce training statute. I think they renamed it the Workforce Opportunity and Innovation Act. It's due to sunset pretty soon, and we're going to have an amazing opportunity to reauthorize it in a way that's tailored to the needs in upstate New York. So one of the things I'm really excited about is the opportunity to take the amazing education system we have here in upstate New York. And I'm not just talking about the 4-year colleges. I'm talking about the vocational opportunities and the career and technical schools, and marry those with the needs of employers and innovators on the ground so that you can go get a degree or get a CTE diploma and immediately have a pathway to the middle class because there's jobs available for you there. I talked about the blue collar jobs that my family had for generations. We're on the cusp of bringing those back and giving workers that opportunity again.
Okay, Chol.
So with the research out there, empirical work has shown that 80% of the workforce success depend on soft skills. And as somebody that has workforce development experience, I have witnessed that, and I have experienced that with people that I work with. It is so important, especially here in the city of Syracuse and in the rural community, to make sure that our people have the necessary soft skills to be able to cope with the work environment and be able to provide for their families. And investing in urban youth and in rural youth is very important for sustainability. And one of the things that we don't do very well as Americans is we don't pay attention to 18 years old to 25 years old. And that's a big demographic, and that's a big population that we gotta bring up if we are looking to develop a strong workforce.
Thanks, Joel. Vanessa?
Thank you. The needs of the new economy are changing. It's no longer necessary to be at the center of a mega city on the coast. We have remote work. We have all sorts of technological solutions that allow work to take place very differently. This means that the 22nd district and its attributes as not only a strong manufacturing center, but also a huge agricultural center and a huge medical care center has the opportunity to take on new challenges and become an economic hub. With the medical experience we have in the coming senior boom, elder care can and should be a formalized part of our economy and part of our medical care provisions. We can have climate safe manufacturing for renewable batteries, which are provided for with special credits in the infrastructure bill. I think I'm out of time.
And Sam?
Thank you. The thing is with this whole thing, we have to make sure that it's inclusive, okay, of everyone, and everybody has an opportunity to participate fully in these opportunities. You have to have access to training. You have to have access to transportation. You start in high school programs. I'm a product of this same thing we're talking about right now. And I'm just so happy to hear that it's back on the table and coming to fruition. But we have to not only talk about it, as we say, you have to be about it and make sure that it happens. They used to have a thing called Manpower, which was a state-funded program, which of course was federally funded down to the state for the state to administer those dollars. And we have to get back to those programs and make sure that it happens. And again, it's accessible to everyone throughout the whole country, in the rural areas, farmers, everything. There's just so many things that this impact, and I'm just glad that it's back on the table. And I will
Thanks.
be the one.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Sam. Steve, take us home on this one.
All right, absolutely. Be glad to. 2 quick points. First of all, in my Green New Deal for Central New York, I talk about the reimagining of the Central New York economy by giving carbon credits and be able to be the leaders in wind, solar, and electric power here. Our infrastructure is built for this in Central New York. And as one of the premier educators and leaders in public sector finance in this across the entire country, I'm going to bring this in day one. Second, I want to talk about real quick on cleaning that up. So we can look at climate change now and going forward, but we have to clean up what we did. So here where I'm sitting here in Oklahoma, the Quapaw Nation recently took over an EPA Superfund site, much like what the Onondagas could do in the Onondaga Lake and the Seneca and the Cayugas here. And that's what I'm working here in this past week. So we're going to use that as a proof of concept.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve. We got it. 7th question, almost the last. Sam, we're going to ask you to kick this off.
Okay.
How do you see America's role in the world? What is your vision for restoring U.S. global leadership?
Well, we're big brothers. We have to lead the way. And again, the main thing is to get back into the pacts that our former president took us out of. And then the thing is, again, we have to lead the way and continue to reduce our carbon footprint on the globe. And this is a global thing, global warming, climate control, all those things. We have to do it for ourselves first. And when, it's when you see the water, the tides rising, all the floods that we have around here, just like today, folks are out riding their motorcycles up here. That's climate change and global warming. So again, we have to lead the way in that in any way we can. But we have to first take the first step, like I said, and reduce our carbon footprint on the world.
Francis, on global leadership?
Yeah, listen, I think that the United States will and continue to play an active role leading on so many different fronts. Sam just mentioned on global warming and climate change. It's absolutely critical that we lead the way on this. We have to continue to pressure China and lead the way in the Paris Climate Accord, but also on matters of international security. I mean, as we speak right now, we've entered this frightening period in history where Russia is invading Ukraine, and the United States needs to continue to play a leadership role and in maintaining the peace and a role with our alliances. And I support a diplomacy first approach to these crises that we continue to confront globally.
Thanks. And Chol, on global leadership?
Yes, one of the things that attracted me to the United States across the world is its leadership. And I think it's important to know what America is capable of. And thing that I think I agree with Francis, we need to practice diplomacy over aggression, dialogue over dominance, and maintain that peace. As somebody that have witnessed what war can do, we cannot beat our chest and say that war is the solution. Because I've been there. I have seen the ugliness of war. I'm a refugee because of war. There is nothing good about war. So war should be the absolute last of our effort, because I know what it does. There's too many Americans that we have lost over the years because we have jumped into wars too quickly. And I think making sure that we keep that diplomacy, that we stay away from aggression is the way to go. And through that leadership, America can continue to be the leader that we see.
Thanks, Joel. Sarah?
Great, thank you. So I similarly agree. The U.S. has a great international stage as a leader. As a former veteran, having lost troops to war, and as a member of Truman National Security Project, I firmly believe that we must continue our diplomacy first efforts in terms of international security and strategy. That said, while we are a national and international leader on the global stage, leaders also must know when to follow. And I think that it would be impervious for us to go ahead and look at some of the things that folks around the world have done and what they're excelling at. When we talk about climate change, Europe's about a decade ahead of us in terms of the products that they're putting out and the way that they're addressing climate. Similarly, when we talk about healthcare, let's look at other models that are working in other international countries and see if maybe something there is an opportunity for us to explore. And again, childcare, it shouldn't be that hard. We've been doing this for generations, eh? But I think that there's a real opportunity here to be that leader, but go by following and see where we have great models internationally.
Thanks for childcare. And Steve, over to you.
As probably being the most deployed candidate for Congress in this cycle with 5 combat deployments, I'm going to say this: war is not the answer. There are plenty of us out there that bear that burden and that scar. So I propose a 10 to 15% cut in the DoD budget to pay for programs that could go toward peace initiatives. I work on a daily basis with USAID and the State Department on trying to find peaceful initiatives. And I will say, as part of my military service, the proudest thing I did was working on humanitarian assistance projects in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Jordan, and Egypt, turning swords into plowshares. Thank you.
And Vanessa?
As much as we talk about politics for this district, the issues we're talking about, democracy, climate, healthcare, are really issues that defy borders. And so everything is about the global stage these days. COVID has showed us this. An era of pandemic show us this. Working and leading on public health, which means providing financing as well as leadership by example, is key. Climate defies borders, and it is also a channel for diplomacy when diplomacy fails on other fronts with countries, like with China, like even with Brazil, other countries that otherwise do not want to work with us on a whole lot. We need to fund the Green Climate Fund, which is a huge structure for climate justice and an international fund to support lower income countries in doing what they need to do to ensure their security in preparing for climate. And we need to provide global health funds the money they need to fight future pandemics.
Right on the finish line. Josh, take us home.
Sure. I think Chol said something that I thought was really touching and that I appreciated. And I might not get it exactly right, but it was something to the effect of, we need to remind the world what we're capable of as a country. We are capable of a lot better than this. We have the vote being suppressed. We have our democracy fraying at the seams. We had January 6th, and that is not the example we should be putting out to the world. The example we should put to the world is the example we've put to the world for generations. We've had our flaws, but we have been a beacon of democracy and what representative government can be. And so when I say that democracy is a first order issue, it applies here as well. One other thing that we really need to consider is we need to take a hard look at our trade deals and for the most part, rip them all up and start over again. Upstate New Yorkers can compete with anyone in the world, so long as we're competing on a level playing field. But we have been sold out by terrible trade deals that require us to compete where there are no environmental standards, where labor is cheap. And so we need to revisit our trading relationships across the globe.
Thanks. And we're coming up to the last question, and we're going to test the flexibility and dexterity on your feet because our timer says we got 60 seconds each for the closing comments. We'll do the closing comments in reverse alpha order, but we'll take the last question, which is a one answer question in alpha order. So Francis, you'll be the first one. And then we down the list. Syracuse and Cornell have a lacrosse game on April 11th. Who are you cheering for? One answer, Francis.
Syracuse.
Vanessa.
Cornell.
Steve.
I am a proud graduate of Syracuse University, so go Orange.
One answer, one word. Sarah.
Orange.
Chol.
Both.
Josh,
I grew up watching the Gate Brothers and Matt Palum, Syracuse all the way.
Sam.
Cornell alum.
Okay, Sam, you get to start your closing statement. Hold it to 60 seconds, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to thank all you guys for giving us a chance to compete and participate in this open forum. Thank you very much. We've been shut out of some of them, some of us anyways. But anyways, I just want to be the one to represent Central New York, Finger Lakes, and Southern Tier and lead the charge in the economy, healthcare, technology, education, environmental, agriculture, access to jobs and technology. So important. So again, thank you very much. And I'll leave it there. But I just want to make sure that I'm the one that you send to Washington to fight for a better America. Thank you.
Josh.
Sure. Hey, thanks everybody again so much for organizing this. I open tonight by saying how optimistic I am about what we can accomplish together. And I really am. We are facing some really big challenges, but also some great opportunities. And upstate New Yorkers are nothing if not resilient. When the world has faced big challenges, we always rise to meet them. We manufactured the boots that soldiers wore in the world wars. We made the televisions that families gathered around to watch an American step foot on the moon. And we made the computers that brought the world a technology revolution. And I believe in my heart and soul that we can be on the cutting edge again. We can be the place that not only invents, but also manufactures the technologies that save the planet from climate change. We can be the place that makes the things that address the supply chain shortages we've seen over the past 2 years. We can revitalize and we can innovate and we can strengthen the economy, and we can do it in a way that lifts everyone up and brings everyone along. And I can't wait to do that with all of you.
Thanks, Josh. And Chol, I owe you a cup of coffee or tea for mispronouncing your name several times, but take it away with your closing statement.
I like you. Thank you. So this race is not about anything else, but it is about putting American people first. As somebody that came as a refugee and have worked, built palaces in my hands, and to make sure that I feed myself, to make sure that I'm sending money back to my country to help my family feed themselves. People went through days without food. Coming to this country and realizing that the same thing that I went through where I came from is happening here. This race, it's about giving people hope. It's about leveling the playing field, making sure that people are heard, people have the same opportunity. This is what it is about. This is what America is all about. I'm fighting to make sure that those that have always been pushed aside have a voice. And through foster care system, through everything I've been through, so many Americans will see themselves through this race, and I thank you all.
Thanks. And Sarah?
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody tonight for a very enjoyable night. And I also have to tell you, these 1-minute responses stress me out. I have a lot to say sometimes, and when I see that ticker going down, it was like a mental load in and of itself. But other than that, it was highly enjoyable. Similarly, I had to scrap my closing remarks. I'd like to again say we are at a pivotal moment here in our country, in our district. We have a chance to help create something amazing, to recorrect the wrongs of the previous administration, to help build back and bring equity into a system that it's long been absent from. We have the opportunity to provide foundations for Americans to help them increase their plot in life, to help them increase their positions through healthcare, childcare, college and labor opportunities. And they must not be lost in this moment. So I look forward to carrying this forward and seeing what great opportunities we can bring back home. Thank you.
Steve, over to you for 60 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, I want to appreciate the good folks of Tompkins County. When this district first got redrawn, I went down there to talk to great leaders you had down there, such as Dan Lamb and Svante. Great conversations I had with both of them down there within the first days of this district. We are at an event horizon in our democracy. If we don't step up now with good progressive policy, and policy matters, that's how we are going to turn people who disagree with us there. And as an endorsed progressive, in this race, endorsed by the good people of Blue America PAC, Marianne Williamson, Dan Lamb, other people who have been down there, who have fought the fights. I want to say this. We are going to bring home policy that's going to help every single person, no matter what your background is, no matter how much you have never been listened to. That's what we're going to do on day one.
Thanks, Steve. Good on you. Good on you. Vanessa, up to you.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everybody, for a really warm welcome to this wonderful race of incredible candidates. The moment we are at, as everybody is saying, is a very critical one. And it is scary and it is overwhelming for people. And sometimes it's really critical to know and remember what we have done and accomplished in the past. And that's something that this district is really special about. We can go up to Seneca Falls and see where women launched the suffragette movement and talked about voting rights, just as we are today. We can go to Geneva and we can look at the ways that Harriet Tubman and members of the Underground Railroad boldly defied convention and helped to fight for civil rights and equality, the old DEI mentality. We built the Erie Canal, infrastructure at its most intense. These are things we can do, and we now need leadership to get us there. Thank you.
Right on the finish line. Francis, take us home on this one.
Yeah, I just really want to thank everyone tonight for being here. I want to thank my fellow candidates. I love you all. This is such hard work to do this. It's such a sacrifice. But this is our country and this is our community. And we live in a country where you really have to want it. You have to want to make it better. And it's been such a long road to build this country. And so many have sacrificed. So many have sacrificed to get here. So many have sacrificed to build this country. So many have sacrificed overseas. Too many people have marched to build this democracy and this republic. And we can't let it slip backwards. So much of the policies we're talking about are an opportunity to really build a more just, a more equal, and a more caring Central New York and America. And I want to be part of that. And I thank you all for being part of that.
Francis, thanks a lot. Thanks to each of you. And it's been a joy and a pleasure to work with all 7 of you. To Sarah's point, in wrapping up, the Issues Committee of the TCDC, the Tompkins County Democratic Committee, will be soliciting suggestions for future programming. Maybe like longer time to talk. Look for more information in the March TCDC newsletter. And back to Linda Hoffman for important information about where you and your friends can view tonight's program.
Good evening. This has been a wonderful, challenging putting together this forum, but each of you as the candidates have really made this quite easy. I want to extend a special appreciation to each of you this evening and to those that contributed the questions. There will be a rebroadcast on public access TV with the schedule to be determined. I do encourage this evening's viewers to click the subscriber button on your YouTube screen to receive updates from the TCDC channel and to view tonight's recorded 22nd Congressional Candidates Forum and the New York 53rd State Senate Candidates Forum from Sunday. You can also visit those excellent and growing collection of TCD videos as well. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening and enjoy the rest of the night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Night, y'all.